Good morning and welcome to today's Take 5. Today we are going to be starting a new book, and that is First Thessalonians. And so before we get started, we're going to just play a short little overview clip to just kind of help us get the context for what's going on in First Thessalonians, who wrote it, and all that jazz. So here's a short little video.
Paul's first letter to the Thessalonians. This is most likely the earliest letter that we have from Paul, and the backstory for it is found in the book of Acts. It's where Paul and his co-worker Silas went to the ancient Greek city of Thessalonica. And after just 1 month of telling people the good news about Jesus, a large number of Jewish and Greek people gave their allegiance to Jesus, and they formed the first church community there. But trouble was brewing. Paul's announcement of the risen Jesus as the true Lord of the world, it led to suspicion. So the Christians in Thessalonica were eventually accused of defying Caesar, the Roman emperor, when they said that there is another king, Jesus. And this led to a persecution that got so intense, Paul and Silas actually had to flee from the city, and this was painful for them because they loved the people there so much. And so this letter is Paul's attempt to reconnect with the Christians in Thessalonica after he got a report from Timothy that they were doing more than okay, they were flourishing despite this intense persecution. He designed the letter to have two main movements. First is a celebration of their faithfulness to Jesus, and then he challenges them to keep growing as followers of Jesus. And then these two movements are surrounded by three prayers. The letter opens with a thanksgiving prayer, the two movements are linked together by a transitional prayer, and then the whole thing is concluded with a final prayer. It's a beautiful design. Paul opens by giving thanks and celebrating the Thessalonians' faith, their love for others, and their hope in Jesus despite persecution. He goes on to retell the story of their conversion, how they used to be idolatrous polytheists, and they were living in a culture where all of life was permeated by institutions and practices that honored the Greek and Roman gods. And Paul talks about how they turned away from those idols to serve the living and true God, and that they're now waiting for the coming of God's Son from heaven. So in a city like Thessalonica, transferring your allegiance to the Creator God of Israel and to King Jesus, this came at a cost. Isolation from your neighbors, hostility from your family. But for the Thessalonians, the overwhelming love of Jesus who died for them and the hope of his return, it made it all worth it.
So the Thessalonians were chosen and loved by God, and this new identity led to a changed activity. And so in verse 3, we see that remembering before our God and Father your work of faith and labor of love and steadfastness of hope in our Lord Jesus Christ. So in this verse, we're going to break down these three elements. The first one is work of faith. So in the original Greek, this would be translated to being employed. And so it's faithful and daily devotion to Christ. Second is labor of love. And in the Greek, it's this word called, I'm going to butcher this, but kopos, K-O-P-O-S, don't know. And so this is actually intense and toilsome labor. And because the Thessalonians had tasted God's love for them, they could share that love with others, no matter how painful it was. And the last is steadfastness of hope in our Lord Jesus Christ. So steadfastness and hope. So unwavering, firm, enduring, and really it's just this attitude that they're not crossing their fingers and hoping for a better future. They are confident in Jesus and that he is going to come back in his return and his victory. And we see that in verse 10 towards the end of the chapter. It's actually verse 9 and 10, so the very end of the chapter. Says, for they themselves report concerning us the kind of reception we had among you, and how you turned to God from idols to serve the living and true God, and to wait for his Son from heaven, whom he raised from the dead, Jesus, who delivers us from wrath to come. So they are confident in his victory, and they are confident in his return, and this propels them to continue the work. And so I want to encourage you guys to work, continue the work of faith and labor and love, and just really make sure that your confidence is set on his victory and his return and not the temporal circumstances you may find yourselves in. He is good and he is a good father, and once you've tasted that love, that's what's powering you, that's what's propelling you. And Yeah, there's nothing like it. I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.